generally, if we set out to do something,
we're gonna get it done.
we get it done. Right? So now that you know that about yourself, everything that I've tried to do, I've done.
Yeah.
Let's stop and think about all the things that we haven't tried to do.
Before we get into this episode, I know you've been struggling with the idea of starting your own business and launching a premium product that you know is going to transform lives. So I have a bomb resource for you. The man himself, Words Taylor, is going to help you launch your product or service for the clients who need your help right now. Now, you can't call yourself a business owner unless you are getting in front of new clients every single day, and Words knows exactly how to do that. All you have to do is tap in so he can teach you his 6-figure launch strategy that's produced over $5 million in client sales. So all you have to do is go to highticketlaunchsecrets.com. That's highticketlaunchsecrets.com and get into the free training. It's happening this week. So go to highticketlaunchsecrets.com and let's get into the episode.
Welcome to another episode of the Work and Play Podcast. I'm your host, Ariel Young, and I have the wonderful Africa Gadison here to join me today. What's going on, Africa?
Oh, life is good.
Thanks for joining me. Life is good. Let's start there. Literally, we're going to start there so that we can really get clear on like what does work and play look like for you and how does life is good like resonate. But before we get into that, would you mind introducing yourself?
Oh, no problem. I'm Africa Gadison. I am a marketing communications professional. I've been in the business for, I always say 20 plus, but it's getting really close to 30 years. Scary as that is. Yeah.
A lot of experience.
Yeah. Yes. And also just recently started a video business with my cousin, and it's been great doing that. And so I love just capturing stories for businesses and people. So that's what I've been doing. Originally from Chicago also. So I have to throw that in.
You gotta do Chi-Town. Why not?
Absolutely.
You gotta throw Chi-Town in there. So yeah, just to let y'all know we represent. Okay.
Exactly.
So of course, the point of us getting into this conversation and the name of the podcast being Work and Play, it always kind of morphs into whatever the discussion is going to be. But because you have this extensive background in marketing, and now you're creating this video company, I feel like it's worth me asking, like, do you feel like your corporate life is a pull or a tug from your business life, or do you feel like they complement each other?
They certainly complement each other. One was born sort of out of the other. I had started my career in advertising marketing, and just really started to realize how much more we were leaning into video, because it's so hard to capture people long enough for them to read your message. So if we could show those stories a little bit more than tell people.
Yeah.
And so it really made me say I really would like to learn more about video. I'd always wanted to be like a dream job is being a filmmaker and doing my own film. So this was a great opportunity for me to go back to school, get a master's, and learn the ins and outs of video work. And it's been a great compliment. Now, in my roles, in my professional life and corporate side, I find that if I speak to that experience, then people love to lean to it or find opportunities to be able to sort of use that knowledge. So they definitely complement each other. It's just in shooting the video side, I get to seek out sort of the stories that I want to tell and the businesses that I want to work with, and things like that. So it's been great.
Okay, so that's from like I would say a business deliverable standpoint, right? Because your corporate experience informs the work that you do here, and then in your video experience, it informs the work that you do in marketing and advertising. But then from a personal life perspective, what does that balance look like? Because I say entrepreneur, so a 9-to-5er and an entrepreneur.
Right. So personal life, it's a lot of I find that, to be honest with you, the video side really sort of leans itself into the personal life a lot, simply because I know so many people who are creatively or actively out doing their own thing, right? And so I always think about a great way of me supporting you is to, even if it's not a situation where you're trying to look for a video opportunity, I do have a background in marketing, advertising, so I find myself sort of making suggestions to friends all the time and things like that. So it definitely plays into it. And the beautiful thing about it is then you end up in a situation where you're sort of supporting your community
Yeah.
through the work that you do and sharing ideas, and like we're growing together. So I love that part of it.
You brought up a good point. Like in my own personal like entrepreneurial journey, the way that I envision it, you know, I love data. I was a data analyst in corporate, so that's part of it. But I'm also going into school for social work, so I'm bringing in this like people aspect of
Right.
it. And the part about building community that you brought up is what I love. So I'm like, I'm still forming my life where I'm like, all of my friends, we add to each other's endeavors, right? Do you have an opinion, like a strong opinion for or against it? Because I kind of like, I had a strong opinion against.
I'm so for it.
Yeah.
I mean, just because there's so many things that just as business owners, as you know, black people, black women in this space, you know, in trying to build your own, you know, how do you get that support? What does that even look like?
Yeah.
You know, who do you go to? Unfortunately, in a lot of situations, just speaking from personal experience, I don't have a lot of relatives or people in my family who have built something from the ground up. So how can I get that, you know, sort of feedback and mentorship from someone? And so that's why it so matters. Like you just said, perfect example. So you just said you come from a background of like data analytics. So as unfortunately, as long as my career has been in marketing and communications, the analytics side of it is fairly new. Like how do you lean on the data and what you find out about your readers to learn and improve the communications and the work that you do?
Yeah.
Right? So now I'm in this place where I'm like, oh my goodness, I need to learn everything about like analytics and all that stuff. So there is a good example.
Yeah, because you can literally knock on my door. Now that we got to share the cell phones. So like, hey, I got this thing. How do I look at the information here? I would love to
Exactly. So those types of things, and doing so in a way that's just like networking, just kind of coming together and being a community is a good way to do it.
Yeah.
You know, setting up opportunities to just have chats with friends and share experiences and talk about kind of what you know and what I know, and we're just all getting better.
Yeah,
You know?
I love it. Now that you mentioned the intersection between what you do in advertising and communication to video. So I feel like there's, if we were to like fast forward, I think there's a conversation where data informs this new journey.
Absolutely.
But I'm curious to know the evolution of the written part, because that part, like you said, is not as data driven, but there's so much of a science to it that's what makes you guys awesome.
Yeah.
So how did you form or develop your skill set in advertising?
Oh, so you know, that's great because my start has shaped my entire career. Where I started my career in an ad agency, which generally no one wants to start in an ad agency. There, you know, it's long hours, it's a lot of tough work, but you see so much, right? So before you sort of set out on this journey of this is where I'm going to be in my career, you get to see what everything looks like. So it was great. But more importantly than it being an ad agency, it was a recruitment advertising agency. So the reason why I think about this all the time, but the reason why that was so important is in order for us to go out, and we were advertising for basically the HR arm of a company, right? So making sure they hire the best talent. In order to do that, you have to really take a deep dive into that company. Figure out what the culture is like. Figure out why people either stay there for years or they leave, you know, whatever it is. But as a new, you know, sort of first job out into the working world, it really gave me a deep look into what matters to people, right? What matters to you in your job?
I need you to help me understand the nature of the job, right? Because you said it was an ad agency, but then when you threw in the HR perspective, I got lost. So help me understand that.
Right. So, okay. So I'm going to put you at a time and place. So it was actually in the .com era.
Okay.
So at a time where people were throwing the world to recruit good talent, right?
Yeah.
You had to really go through and say, what is going to make a person come to work for you?
Got it.
Right? So from an average, and that was still when people were looking for jobs in the newspaper. as well.
So they had to be written communication.
Exactly.
Okay, it had to also capture the eye of somebody in the paper where they're like flipping through, and the communication had to say this company is a good company and all these. Okay,
all of that, and you had to. I mean, we really were like branding people's HR departments. So really looking at it like if you are an employee for Clorox, and Clorox had employees that would stay there 20, 30 years, and we were like, why is that? So we would have to go in and really talk to employees, do focus groups, and figure out what it is about this company that makes them want to stay. And that really shapes it. And it started me on this path of really considering what's important for me in the work that I do, and in my career going forward. Like, what's going to matter? Is it matter the benefits, or the amount of time off you get, or whatever the case may be? What's most important? And for me, it became really a situation where I looked at my entire journey. How much you're going to give for corporate America? You're going to give at least 40 hours a week of your life to this place, right? How much are they pouring into you? Right?
And what are they pouring?
What are they pouring back into you? And that became the thing that I said, that matters the most to me. How is this company supporting me and making sure that I am getting better at my career? I have the tools I need. I have the support I need. I have leadership that actually is invested in me as a person, not just a worker sitting at a desk. All of those things. So, and I came to that conclusion because that's what people would, that's what would resonate the most from employees who have been at companies for 20, 30 years.
They felt like it was a reciprocal relationship.
They felt like, exactly. They didn't feel like they were just coming in, clocking in, and no one cared that, they lost their mother last week, or, you know what I mean?
That's real.
That's real stuff. So, and you start to look at, that really does matter. I felt that way in some jobs where I'm just, if something happened to me tomorrow, they would just fill the seat with someone else. And so that matters. So, it's been a great journey, but to start there, to start in a situation where you're automatically thinking about what your work life means to you, or how that looks. It was a great way to kick it off, right?
Now that gives you because that first position sounds more than just a advertising skill set. That was a world. It was if you didn't have that, that's some people's reason for leaving, because you don't necessarily know what to look for in a company. You just go in. So from a technical standpoint, now you're in this position where you're like, okay, ad agency, but then so much feeds you from a perspective of what do I need to be looking for in this corporate? It kind of raised you to know what to look for. Then what was your next step to say, okay, I want to continue learning communications?
Absolutely.
What was it next?
So one of my, and I always talk about your career journey is often shaped by the people that you meet along it, right? Good or bad, whatever it is. If you have negative experiences, that will shape you as well. But I started in that ad agency. I worked for a woman, and she was magnificent. And she really sort of became a mentor, and she gave me a lot of really good advice. One of the first things she said was, you're very young, you're fresh out of college, create a list of 5 companies. She was like, evaluate that list every year, but this is your dream company list, right? And you make that list based on what matters to you, right? But where are the places? Where would you like to land? Where would you like to be? And she's like, and you're essentially going to form that list based on something, whatever it is. You're interested in their industry, or you read something about it, whatever the case may be. So I did that way back when, and I created this list of dream companies, right? And every year I would apply for these 5 companies.
Can I ask you what they were?
Absolutely. So, in my personal life, I've always been a big video game fan. So Sony was definitely one of the top on the list. Microsoft, one of the top on the list. Microsoft has created so many things that we rely on day to day, that just being a part of that was part of the list. Disney, because we all hear about the creativity in Disney. We hear about sort of the everybody's really into that culture. So Disney was big on the list. That's 3, right? The 4th was Google.
Okay.
Because of everything that they were doing, right? And
so this was, how long ago was this then?
So this was, but see, Google was like pretty young. That's the thing about it.
Okay.
But I should have said that ad agency that I was working at, it was in San Francisco. So we were right outside of Silicon
So you knew the
Valley.
bubble up before the world knew about the bubble up.
I saw Google giving out, for recruitment, just to get like lead engineers, they were like giving out Porsches and stuff. It was ridiculous. It was a .com era, and they were one of the .com bubbles that didn't burst, obviously. But yeah, their recruitment arm was insane. And then the last one was, and this list evolved over time, but the companies that mostly stayed there, the last was IHG, which is where I am now. So, yeah.
Talk about manifestation.
Right?
This story is just getting good.
Isn't that great? Right?
Yeah.
And IHG was also from a standpoint of culture. People loved the company. And, you go on Glassdoor and things like that all the time, but you always read about like best places to work and things like that. The culture there has always intrigued me. People love it. So it's, I'm 2 months in, but
I was gonna say because I know that. I was gonna say so because you're 2 months in and you've got you know the ebbs and flows of what it's like to date a person and then really get to know a person. So you're in the 2 month phase. Do you feel like what you put on your dream board is starting to come to fruition?
Absolutely.
That's
and
so
everything that I wanted out of a company that full of people who are there as a team and supportive and looking to move the business along, thinking about the customer first. And it's everything that I wanted it to be. So I'm very much excited.
That's cool. So you mentioned this guidance that your, I want to say mentor gave you is actually pretty good. I think that's actually the advice that I would have given myself years before. But there's this new nuance. Right? Why just companies, and why now that you're into entrepreneurship? How has your perspective changed in terms of goals now that
it's changed tremendously? Because I sit back and think about had I thought about building my own space back then, which I never really did. So here's the thing: so we were very much in a place where we were just starting to evolve in the working perspective from our parents who get with a company and that's the only company they ever work for.
True, got you.
Whereas her advice was, and this is good career advice as well. So we were doing all of the work on the recruitment side and trying to look at things. And so one of the things that we looked at from a perspective of an employee, right? You get raises, you get merit increases, things like that, and whatever. But what we looked at is the data showed that after your 3rd year, you were losing money. So from that perspective, because if you think about this, whenever you've changed jobs, right, that's your biggest opportunity to make a big jump in salary.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's your biggest opportunity to talk yourself up and you know what? I need at least a X amount of dollar raise,
10,
right?
20, 30.
Right, exactly. That's your opportunity.
Yeah.
Right? So, so you move to a new position. You're there for 3 years. You get that jump.
Yeah.
Then you're on to something else. Or if you stay there 4 or 5 years, you're getting, 2% raise? You know what I mean? It's nothing compared to what you could do. So that also shaped me. Because that made me say, it really changed my thinking from starting out my career and sort of on the advice of my parents, find a good company and be there forever. Well, no, that's not the best way to do it.
Yeah.
The best way to do it is find a great company, improve your skills. You should not be the same employee 3 years out that you were when you walked in the door. Right. And then you have an opportunity to capitalize on the experiences that you've gained. Yes. That's a better way to do it. Yes.
Now, when you think what you're talking about in terms of data, is what I'm thinking is law of diminishing returns, right? So as long as I'm here and I'm getting something for 3 years, and at 3 years, I'm now the way I'm interpreting what you're saying is from a data perspective, the money that you could get starts to be you can get more if you leave. But then how do you translate that into building your skill sets or becoming the type of employee you want to be?
The top 3 responses that I get when I ask, why do you want to leave corporate America, are that you want financial freedom, you want to own your own time, and you want to build a legacy for this generation and generations to come. Now, this is not a solo job. In order to transition from your 9 to 5 into entrepreneurship, it's going to take community and it's going to take resources. And I've created the community of pioneers who are going to wrap around you and help you make that transition successfully. So if you're interested in leaving your job, go ahead and click that information below. Let's get into the community and let's transition from your 9 to 5 into entrepreneurship successfully. Now let's get back to the episode.
I would definitely say, because during your whole career, you should always be thinking about how you can improve, right? So from my standpoint of now looking to how I can improve my knowledge around data, right? And things like that. So whether it's taking a class or getting some certification or whatever, you should constantly be looking to improve yourself. And if you do that work, then shouldn't your station in life improve a little bit as well? Because now I have something different in my toolbox.
Yeah.
You know, so the person I am today is different from who I was 3 years ago. Yeah. So things like that, like you have to, you know, constantly be putting into yourself, right? And making, hopefully your company is doing the same. Yeah. You know, and looking to move. And having said that, if you're with a great company, that could mean a great company is going to support your journey. They're going to support your growth. So if you're here in this role today and you gain some more skills, a great company is going to find out, or at least have possibilities for you to move to something else. Yeah. And so we should constantly be looking at that, the ways in which and how we can evolve in our journey.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. So really and truly, you were at a place where even your train of thought was like the rebellious of that, you know, like of that time. Because it's like now, because of where I am today, I think my advice might even be more nuanced. Like, how would you give someone advice?
Absolutely.
Like, because it's like, do you create something at 21? Or do you list 5 companies at 21? Or do you do something else?
I think you do both.
Yeah.
I think you do both. I think you do, first of all, one thing that we've gained now that we didn't have back then, and I have to think like, I'm talking like late 1990s that I started my career. We didn't think about the possibilities and the importance of something that's common for us now, and that's multiple streams of income. You know, we didn't think in terms of that. We thought in terms of go to work 9 to 5 and you know, collect and hopefully one day you're set up enough where you can retire. Yeah. Now we certainly think of, I have so many interests and there are other people out here who would love to know more about this. How can I turn that into something else? Yeah. So we certainly think differently now. Yeah. So I think that plan should be different. It should be, you know, do you have 5 companies? Or if you don't have 5 companies, do you have 5 opportunities or 5 things that you can think of that you can lend to yourself? You know what I mean? Yeah. So we should think about things differently.
Yeah, I think now that we're kind of brainstorming out loud,
absolutely.
I feel like it's like what I would say is, for someone who's 21, right? Because your skill sets are evolving, your personality is evolving. You might still have some more to explore about yourself, but I would say before you even start a list of anything, so I talk about this all the time, inventory your skills, and then inventory just the things that you're curious about.
Exactly.
That's probably where I would start.
That's a good place to start, right?
If there are companies that would allow you to explore those things, maybe go that route first, and then go create something. Yeah,
exactly. And that's the thing. Working for a company should not be the end game. Yeah. You know, being a company should be the end game.
I like that.
Yeah. So we'll put a pin in that one, right? We'll write that one down. But you know, we don't think about it, and then it takes somebody like, you know, think about like Jay-Z had that lyric, right?
Which one?
He said something like, I think his lyric was, I'm not a businessman, I'm a businessman.
I like
right?
it. Yes.
Like that's facts. Like we shouldn't be thinking about how we can continue to build, you know, somebody else's business up. And I always think about this specifically in American society, because I think that maybe in other cultures they have been far more entrepreneurial in their thinking, but we have not been.
Yeah.
And that's just because of how our society was built. Yeah, you do all the work, build these companies up, and then, yeah, you can go retire. Maybe you'll be able to, you're lucky if you're able to pass down something to the next generation, right? Well, let's build something for the next generation, you know? So we definitely have to be different in how we think. And I think, you know, all of those ways that maybe we probably didn't feel supported in that thinking when we were younger, we've got to change that narrative for these next generations.
Yeah, and this next generation is fire, because even the advice I just gave, they're like, I don't even want to start with the company. I'm going to create my stuff at 2. I have this like multi-million-dollar company at 18. I'm like, goodness gracious. They think so much more limitless, and that's just because I'm only 30. They make me feel kind of grandma-y. You know what I mean? Because I'm still trained to the traditional thinking to a degree. Yeah. So back to you in terms of your skill set, because we could go.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
we have a lot of fun with this, right?
I'm enjoying this. I'm sure it's gonna go off again, but when you think about, like, this is earlier in your career, so like what was the first project that sparked your interest, or the first one that you would say is like, okay, this is a notch in my belt?
So you know what, and this was really early on. I think I had been at this agency for 6 months, and shout out to, her name is Gloria Braddock. She is amazing. Gloria, I believe, started her career at Motown, worked for Motown for a very long time, so she always gave me like Diana Ross vibes, right? Like very much like Diana vibes, right? Like walk in a room and there's, you know, that type of deal. But very early on, we were going for a pitch meeting, and it was a big client, and the client actually at the time was Clorox. And so here I am, very green to advertising. The most I know. I went to school for advertising specifically because of the movie Boomerang. It spoke to me. Like, I was like, yes, that's me. Yes, I was like, yes, that's me. I need to be in there with Strange, and I could have got Strange to work her magic. Like, yeah, that was the inspiration, right?
Yeah.
And so to come to this agency, and Gloria was the person running it, and it was just like, oh, I'm here. This is exactly what I wanted, right? And so I was really excited, and she put me on the team going to pitch Clorox, and I'm like, sure, I'm just going to take these notes and I'll have all the notes. And she's like, no, so the way this is going to work is you're going to do the pitch. Do what? Yeah, what? Yeah, but she was like, this is the great thing about it. She didn't say that and say, come up with it and figure it out and do it. She said that, and she said, okay, so next Saturday, I'll see you at my house. We'll go through some notes. We'll talk through how this works.
Okay.
And so it's that investment in people, right? Like, you want a business, or you want your company or your team to be successful like that.
Yeah.
Now, here you have a young kid coming into the business, and I'm like, I'm excited because I'm new. But I'm terrified because you just told me I'm going to pitch a big business, right? And so to let you know that, yeah, you're going to do it, but I'm going to help you do it.
Yeah.
And we're going to do this because I know that you can. That's why I'm putting you in this position. And so it's that feeling like, here's somebody who knows what they're doing and they have confidence in me. And that was, like I said, that experience at that agency started my career, and it put me in a mindset of who I want to be as a professional, and as a mentor, and as a person helping the next person coming in, but what I look for in a leader.
Yeah.
Right? And so went in there, and Gloria's like, you know, you've got this. And I was like, okay, so and I pitched a couple times to her, and we finally nailed it, and we went in there and we got the business. And
I feel like I'm living this moment.
Right?
Yes.
So it's like, so from there, where do you go? At that point, you feel like you can do anything.
Yeah.
I can do this because I have somebody who's going to challenge me in ways that make me better and help me through it, you know? Yeah. And so, yeah.
Mentorship has had I can, as soon as you tell me that story, the world lit up. Like, I'm like, there's so much that gives a young person in their career. You can't tell them anything.
No, you can't. I was like, okay, now what's next? What's next? What are we doing? Yeah.
Is that how you attacked your career going forward?
Absolutely. Absolutely. What's next? Where are we going from here? What's the next challenge? I think about some of the biggest challenges that I've had in my career, and if I remove that experience from it, I don't know that I would have accomplished it the same way.
That's so impactful.
Right? You think about that.
Yeah.
Like, she really shaped my entire career, just in and it's as simple as this, right? Because somebody's always going to look up to you, whether it's a young, you're young, if you have children or nieces, nephews, whatever. But to be that person who is like inspiring to them to say, okay, I know you can do this. I'm going to help you.
Yeah.
And we'll get through.
Yeah. She's teaching you how to trust yourself. Well, she's kind of, you're borrowing her trust in you until you do it, and then you trust yourself.
Exactly.
And from any point forward, any situation, one thing that humans, we grow up as adults and we don't trust ourselves.
At all. We are the naysayers in the back of our minds. No, don't do that. You can't do that. You've never done that before.
Yeah.
Yeah. We will
That's
stop.
self-doubt.
Yeah.
So, do you have a relationship with self-doubt at all? Then,
not
to say that you're like impervious to self-doubt.
Completely. I could talk myself out of something in a heartbeat, but I've realized, and I have to talk myself. Courtney and I were talking about this, and Whitney and I talked to different friends about this. If you stop and think about everything you've done in your life, right? And you think about maybe the things that you talked yourself out of. Let's just start with the things that you've done in life. I challenge you to find a handful of things that you failed at. Generally, if we set out to do something,
We're gonna get it done.
we get it done. Right? Mm-hmm. So now that you know that about yourself, everything that I've tried to do, I've done.
Yeah.
Let's stop and think about all the things that we haven't tried to do. Right? I said I was going to be at the Oscars by 40, so I'm a few years past that. So I'm a little overdue.
But if you ever wanted that to be your goal,
I need to make this happen, because everything I've set out to do in life, I've been able to do.
100%.
Yeah.
Just from you telling me that story, I'm like, shoot, dip back into that pool, and whatever it needs to happen, like strategizing, it's gonna happen.
Yeah. So that's the big thing, is like making the time for you and the things that you want to do, and realizing that don't be the person who cancels out the dream before it even starts.
Right.
Because we do that.
We do. So going deeper into that, it's funny because I think whether you like corporate or not, if you're good at it or not, if you don't have that trust, I think that's where things get a little shaky. And if you don't have someone in corporate or professional mentor to do it, then it has to come from home.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you got any of your foundation of like confidence or identity from home, or do you feel like if it hadn't been for her, some of that home stuff?
So you know what? I got a good amount of who I am from home. My mother in particular, my mother has always been my biggest fan. Like as mothers usually are, right?
Yeah.
That's why I watch movies and like these mothers are like hypercritical of their kids. I'm like, I've never experienced that.
Yeah.
No, my mother's always been my biggest fan. I can tell you, and always very like supportive of me, encouraging in terms of making sure I was independent. She's a single mom, and maybe that helps. But at one time in particular, I was looking to, and I just heard about this from a teacher, right? She had this whole program. We were in inner city, south side of Chicago, and she heard about like these East Coast boarding schools that were offering scholarships to kids.
Okay.
I don't know nothing about the East Coast or their boarding schools, but I did know Facts of Life with Tootie and them. Come on now, come through, Kim Fields.
I know what's the experience.
Yeah, come through. So we have that like point of reference, right?
Okay.
I had boarding school. I just knew Tootie on the roller skates skating through the dorm. Mm-hmm. Like that was my point of reference, and I was like, that seems like fun. Like they were all like having a good time. Like sure. And so went through the whole application process or whatever, and I came home and I told my mom, I was like, so there's these schools, and they're looking for kids to give scholarships to, and she was like, you can do it. Like that was the encouragement. It was never like, how are we going to pay for that? Or how are we, it was never that. It was basically shoot your shot. Right? And so filled out all the applications, did all that stuff, wrote my own essay, and I'm in 8th grade at this point, but one of the biggest things, and I think about it, and I'll think about it now, and I'm like, how amazing were you? But one of the big things that we had to do was go interview with their alums, different schools, with the alumnus from the school. So
8th grade.
8th grade.
Yes.
And so I sit back and I say, wow, but Chicago's not, being an 8th grader on the bus by yourself, that's not even a big deal. Like, we all do that. We get around the city. We are all over the city.
Pretty self-sufficient kids.
Completely.
Okay.
So
you're trying to like put things into perspective.
I'm trying to, because if I see, I'm trying to. But yeah, so that part of it really wasn't a big deal. But for this particular school, the alum that I was interviewing with was like a partner at a law firm downtown. And so like I go by myself to this law firm.
Yeah. And
I walk in, it's like marble everywhere. I'm like, it's massive. It is top law firm in Chicago. Like really nice and like really impressive. And I sit back and think about that. I was not intimidated by it, right? I was like, oh, I'm about to do this, right? And so go in and get knock the interview out and get the scholarship. And I come home like with the thing came in the mail. And I was like, wow, look, we got in. And she was like, I told you could do it. So that level of confidence in myself definitely came from my mother. And it was always one of those things from her. You do your best, and if, whatever happens, whatever's to be will be. You don't talk yourself out of it before you ever do it. Don't be intimidated by the possibility of being great. Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's lit. Ooh, I wish I want to say I wish I had your mom, but like just that experience, it literally everything was for you.
Yeah.
So when I think about your evolution as would you say a marketer?
I would say a communicator.
A communicator. Got it. My question was going to be more so like in what way, kind of thinking back to like the first notch you had in your belt. How did you create a professional brand for yourself, and like what do people know Africa's good for?
Yeah, and that's a good point, because you asked in that question, would you say a marketer? And I said I would say a communicator, but truthfully, it's been a communicator. It's been somebody in branding. It's been somebody in advertising. It's been somebody who has, I've worked as a writer. I've worked as a project manager. And so I think that's the brand. Like, Africa is what you need her to be to get, you know what I mean?
To communicate.
Yeah, exactly.
Through words. Branding could be, visual as well.
Absolutely, visuals. Yeah, I will get on some, get on Adobe and try to, make that happen. So yeah, I am definitely, that has been my journey. That has been like the way I've taken, my career by storm. Is I am not afraid of a new challenge. I'm not afraid to say, I'm not a graphic designer, but I love graphic designers. I'll figure it out. Like, let me learn this skill, and that has sort of shaped me along the way, because what I've realized is that people are happy to share what they know. Yeah. Right. And so in the ad agency, for instance, and that in that standpoint, I was an account person, so working with the client and making sure that they had what they need, and then going back to the creative team, the writers, the designers, and saying, this is how this works, and making sure we shape that for them. Yeah. But then evolving into those roles at some point in my career. Yeah. And so I think that what that taught me in the ad agency is, number one, designers were happy to know that I was not afraid to open up InDesign, or it was Quark back then. Got it. Myself. but I wasn't afraid to jump in and help them out, because maybe they were overworked, and I'm like, I can do this. This is just a copy change. That's fine. I got it. Or from a copywriting standpoint, if I give, a copywriter something, I ask for ideas, and they tell me, okay, I've got a lot on my plate. I can get these back to you next week. What about if I shoot you some suggestions or some options? before then, and then you can just kind of mold it. People are generally happy for that.
Yeah, that's actually you throwing somebody an alley-oop, because sometimes it's easier to manipulate or edit something if you've already started thinking it through.
Right.
Now I could think it.
Yeah, and then it just shapes the type of person. It made it so that they were happier to work with me the next time.
Yeah.
Right? Because it wasn't like just throw it over the fence and, wait for whatever. I'm happy to jump in. I know that 9 times out of 10 we're all overworked in what we're doing.
Yeah.
So if there's some way in which I can help you make this easier, then I'm all for it, you know? And so that, I think, has been me. And that's why when I say this career path, it's been a lot of different roles, project management, making sure things go, working with designers and copywriters and project people, making sure everything happens from beginning to end, working with vendors and things like that. All of that is just sort of my focus on the end goal, what do you need us to do? And then we're going to make sure that you get what you need.
I feel like that's what makes, if I'm thinking in my, I'm trying not to think like a delineation, but I am. I think that's what makes good employees, especially if in a function within marketing, get to know that thing. So as I'm hearing you speak, I'm envisioning a funnel of everything that it takes to like communicate to a customer, and your skill set, that thing that it comes out, is like being able to communicate to whoever it is in whatever medium you throw it. But my skill set translates to, maybe I'm not the best graphic designer, but I know how to communicate to a customer through graphic designer. Maybe I'm not the best,
Absolutely.
So my question to you is more so kind of in the not opposite direction, but into entrepreneurship. One of the things that we really have to do is, because it's great to be an employee who can do everything. Like you make yourself valuable, you make yourself indispensable even. You might even give yourself more buying power, like more leverage. In entrepreneurship, at least in the beginning of entrepreneurship, we talk about honing in, getting really clear on your avatar, being specific, having a niche, specialization, so your customers know exactly what to get from you. Have you experienced a challenge in that for entrepreneurship?
I have, simply because for right now, so I it's funny because the path that I've chosen, the career that I'm working on, is just more of the same, right? It's just more of trying to help people tell the story, right? So I would come to you as another entrepreneur and say, what do you need? Have you been, I'm just taking what I've learned in this time and kind of helping other people out. So, what's your marketing strategy look like? Or, are you proper in looking at your branding? I don't think it's strong enough for what you're trying to say. Or how can you tell the story? Because people aren't really going to read it. Maybe we can do it through video. So that's sort of where I'm leveraging what I've learned over the years to work on different things. Where it's challenging, or where it has been challenging for me, is there's so much happening in the world. So do I need to really, tighten down, and maybe only go for a certain type of business or model, or, what do I need to do? What's most convenient? And now it's to the point where, in addition to my regular work, do I need to really tighten and make sure that I am, kind of specialized so that it's not overwhelming, right?
Yeah.
So that's the thing, and that does play a big degree, a big part in it, and it's almost like a double-edged sword because of the different type of experiences that I've had. I'm more than willing to, always looking to share what I know. So it's like, okay, but there are only so many hours in the day.
Exactly.
Remind yourself that.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm with you. So
thank you so much for watching the Work and Play podcast. This episode is sponsored by the Boss Up Conference, which is a community for entrepreneurs, CEOs, celebrities, and corporate executives to come together, network, and solve some problems. Thank y'all so much for being supporters of the Work and Play podcast. And thank you for watching the Work and Play podcast and all the episodes before. Now let's get back to the episode.
But so that's why I think it's important that we find unique opportunities to just share the knowledge, because sometimes you don't have to do the work. You just have to be able to point somebody in, like, perfect example, we're talking about the data analysis and things like that. You don't necessarily have to do the work, but what a big difference it would make for somebody like me if you just share what you know and point me in the right direction.
You
now
are
I'm
so
off
right.
to do it, right?
Yeah.
So that sharing of ideas, like instead of thinking about it in terms of like, do I have capacity to do all of these things? Maybe we just need to find an opportunity to create just an opportunity to just share what we know.
Yeah.
You know?
It sounds like for you, because you said videography, and then you talk about the weddings that you do and things like that. So you have niched down, and I'm sure your mind wants to go into other business ventures, but it sounds like you have a niche. Yeah. Now you just have to find that creative outlet to have those conversations in other ways. And the job maybe does that for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that you're like, hey, don't call my business asking for graphic design.
Yeah, because that's not going to happen.
Yeah, and that way you can create that boundary for yourself.
Yeah.
Another thing that I'm really loving, like, just hearing the things that you're talking about, because it just brings up so many things that I'm interested about in. And I literally, when it comes to mentorship, I love, like, when I was in corporate, I would put coffee chats on everybody's calendar. Like from the VP all the way down to my peer. I'm like, nice. Everybody's like, oh, you have a coffee chat? Yeah, like, because I was just trained that way. And I love to get to know people. But in entrepreneurship, it's really hard to find like really clear guidance, especially the type that you found where someone was willing to sit with you and pour into you.
Right.
For free, essentially.
Right. So that was the most important experience in my life, and it was free.
It really is.
Yeah.
Have you found, so there was two ways that I'm thinking about this. I'm thinking about you as a mentor, and I'm also thinking about, let's go with you as a mentor, because I'm curious. There's somebody who's an entrepreneur or who's an intrapreneur, and they want to be the best they can be in business, right? I'm almost leaning on a biased question here, because I feel like, and you can maybe agree or disagree, because I'm kind of feeling like for young people, it's easier to get free advice in corporate, and you can get really good advice. But if you're young and you don't have a community of entrepreneurs, then you're basically you're going to have to pay $500 for 15-minute conversations here and here. And it could be beneficial. There's an ROI on it, but I'm leaning towards, strategically, I think it's easier to start an entrepreneurial endeavor, a young person, with that free advice. Yeah,
and that's true. You know, and funny for me, I would often want to get or knowledge specifically from people who had their own businesses. And it's crazy, but I've had so many experiences where that, because you're in corporate, it's almost like a bad thing.
Yeah.
You're right. And so you try to get, and it's almost like I don't necessarily take you seriously because you're in a job and you're probably going to stay in that job. So I'm building a business over here. I don't really have time to give you experience. I have time to give you advice that you're never going to use. Like, I don't have time for that.
Or you're not going to use in a way that's going to create another business.
Or help
my business.
Right. You're just going to use this and give that knowledge back to corporate America. I'm not interested, you know. And so getting advice about how to build was really tough.
Yeah.
So what does that look like? How do you find or create opportunities to maybe build people up, maybe kind of scratch that little itch that they have where it's like, I'm thinking about it, but I don't know what it entails. Yeah. How do we do that? And I think that's a great like opportunity we have to maybe, that's another venture, create something, right? Yeah. Or just come together and figure out ways to do it.
Yeah. I'm really thinking of a mesh. This entrepreneur space that you're in is a good like bridge, gap filler or bridge builder, because when you think about your career advice that you got when you were in the ad agency, you know, based on where we were today, you got the 5 company advice, right? And where we are later, where we are now, we're like, okay, we would tell a kid your interests. And maybe you can build that. Maybe you'll go into a company. Well, with so many entrepreneurs on this side of the thing being so biased, maybe it's hard to get that advice.
Absolutely.
But it might be an initiative. There's an initiative. There's a marriage between a corporate person and an entrepreneur. Maybe someone who's not far off, but someone who will help a child explore if entrepreneurship is for them or not.
Right.
I remember when my I thought so at the time it was a director in HR. I would say she was my mentor, but she was like, "You're an entrepreneur. Like, you don't want to be." And at the time, I'm like, "Girl, just find me a job. Like, why are you trying to make me go out here and eat for myself?"
Right. But she knew it.
It was great advice. I love the life I live. I can work 1,000,000 hours because I literally love what I do. But when I speak to people who are in corporate and they love what they do, I'm like, okay, there's also a dream life for somebody who does both.
Right.
But how do you find that in a world where it's hard to get that like general career advice? Like you don't go to entrepreneurs thinking about exploring things. Entrepreneurs don't like curious people.
Yeah.
Like you got to know what you want to do.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
This is not even coming to. I don't even have a question. I'm literally just like brainstorming with you because
but so I think we have to start. Think about this. when we started our journey, right?
Yeah.
When we graduated from high school, before we even graduated, it was like, okay, where do you want to go to college?
Right.
Like those set questions about a set path and the way things have to happen.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
Right? Because now as we're all sitting here and we're talking about like student loans and the amount of debt that the society is in, it's like we've built a society that pretty much sets you up for a lot of debt.
Yeah.
Like why is that the path?
Yeah.
It's never once in that process when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do as a professional, never once did someone say, if you could build anything, if you could create a business where you did X, Y, or Z, what would that look like? Never. So it's not even a thought.
Yeah.
And so that's where I think we have to change things. We have to change the conversations that we have with young folks. We have to let them know, like, it's okay. Remember the whole thing used to be, oh, you want to be a writer, they don't make no money. Like that sort of deal. Like money is the be all and end all because it's not.
Yes.
If you find some happiness, I guarantee you can turn that into ways to make some money.
Absolutely.
Like it's fine.
Yeah.
You know, but until we get away from talking about things in terms of that set way to do things, like there's only one path to success.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
I guarantee you 9 times out of 10, you can go find a young person right now and they might not be able to tell you 5 things that they learned out of that textbook that they carry home every day.
Yeah.
But they can give you some knowledge on, they're going to be able to tell you how to do some stuff in TikTok you didn't even know existed.
Woo!
They can tell you about ways to monetize. These kids they already know how to monetize content on YouTube.
Yeah.
So like these are things this is valuable stuff here.
Yeah.
You know, so
then to your point, to your story, and as we get to know you as really the person who knows how to communicate in any medium, then as we're still building on this concept and then getting into your story, if we were to go back, not in a regret kind of way, like do, because your life has literally cracked out to be something serious. But if someone had asked you that earlier on, do you feel like we would create more successful entrepreneurs who are great at just creating things?
Absolutely. It would. If I had that conversation early on, I think that it would have taken away sort of the hesitancy to create, right? Because what ends up happening is you just become this a person who follows a path and who goes into spaces that already exist, right? Instead of looking at ways in which I am like, this is one of the reasons why I love our friend Courtney. She is an ideal woman. Courtney can come up with 1,000,001 creative ideas, and I love that. Like the fact that your mind is always thinking in terms of what doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And so that was like kind of how I was as a kid. I would, look at stuff and I'd be like, it would be cool if we could do this. And then what about you? Then you start thinking in terms of like, what company can you work for? So now you're back to thinking about things that already exist. It takes that away from you. It takes that willingness or way to thinking about life in a different way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
It takes that away.
Yeah.
And so I think that if that question had been posed to me different, I don't even know what greatness I could have created in that time, because I would have, I think, leaned into those thoughts a little bit more than I did. And like you said, that's not to say that there's never any regrets. Things happen sort of just as they should, but it would have been interesting to know. And more importantly, it makes me, that thought, that it's not a regret, but I guarantee you it shapes the way in which I deal with my nieces, the way in which I talk to my goddaughter, you know what I mean? Things like that.
Yeah.
It changes the way in which I deal with my little cousins and talking about what they want to do.
Yeah.
Because there's no limit to it. So don't think just in terms of a company.
Yeah. And I would imagine it also changes the way you handle things as a mentor.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Somebody who wants to, I think someone who wants to start a business, and then someone who wants to go into corporate, I think you're the best person to give them non-biased advice.
Yeah.
But also kind of encourage them to be something bigger.
Absolutely. Be bigger than that company. One of the most shocking experiences I ever had in corporate America is I went to a company, I worked for a company, and you'd go home on the weekend and you'd be exhausted from the week, right? Really exhausted. And you come in on Monday and you come into an easel of like, in loving memory. And like, that was your greeting. Like, generally every Monday, like, somebody died. Like, that's the first thing you see when you come in. And if that, and if that doesn't tell the story in a lot of ways, because we're going to come into this off of our weekend, we're going to pass by and be like, oh, that's so sad, and then we're going to keep on going with our day. And this business is going to keep on functioning. And and it was just a reminder of that feeling of being a cog, right? Of that.
Yeah.
And so, and then when I think about, and then not too long after that, like Whitney Houston died when I was working there. And there was all this like negative press about her and this, that, and the other. And I said, well, we're talking about her. Why? Because she created, right? Yeah. She left something. Yeah. No matter what, she will always be the voice. No matter what you think about her, she will always have her place in history. And that's what you miss when you don't create. So.
That's fire. I had to take a breath on that one.
That's the difference, right?
Yeah. I think that's really good. That's somewhere around the title of this conversation. Okay.
You'll use that one.
So one of the things that I try to help my clients understand when they want to go into entrepreneurship is packaging their skill sets, right? Communicating it into a brand. So let's do this exercise where you are you're Africa, and your clients, whether it's corporations, whether it's small businesses, they want to know who you are and how you can help. What's that tagline? How do you say what it is that you do, and how do you help people?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I would start somewhere along the lines, and I would play around with the idea of, let me tell your story. Because that's what I've always done. Like, whether if it's for a business, I want to, you want to tell me that you need to improve your membership. Well, I can't start there. That tells me nothing. I need you to tell me who you are. And then I need to look at who you are, why that might matter to your potential customers. Why should they be bothered with you? You know what I mean? Like, that's where I'm looking, to start. And so that's kind of where I think about in terms of what I do. It's always very much as it is communicating, it is listening. It is trying to hear the different things, hear what, consumers would hear when they hear your story. Hear what, is your image the same as what you want it to be? It's not always consistent.
Yeah.
Is the what you're putting off or getting back, are they consistent? Are they in line? So in order to even start to talk about what your story is as a business, I need to know I need you to tell me. I need to tell you to tell me who you are, who you're trying to reach, why you're trying to reach them. What makes you different from the next person trying to do the job? And then from there, I can kind of dig down into the people you're trying to reach and how, figure out a way for them to receive that message. How are they best going to receive that?
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. You did give me that more than the tagline, though.
It's more than the tagline. A little bit of explanation. So that's where I would start. That would
Let me tell you a story.
Absolutely. That would be the start.
Let me tell you. I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. This has been a really cool day.
This has been an awesome day. And this is why we're going to start. I don't know what it looks like, but we're going to start something, the sharing of ideas, because there's so much out here, like just in sharing a thought, an idea, or changing the way I think about something.
Yeah.
And that puts me in a whole new path for what I'm trying to build on my end.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you know what to call me for. If we need to have a data conversation,
So absolutely.
I'm like, because now I am totally in a space where I don't want to. I've created enough databases, enough queries, enough SAS code in my life to please whatever data thinking. But if you call me and it's like, how do we communicate this, or what does the data show in what, like, just
just point me in the right direction. Like, what do I even need to learn about this? Like, where are the tools? Like, I just, I say Google is on the list, but like, so Google, of course, their dashboard for Google Analytics is like, what is happening? Like, if you're new to it, it's very confusing. But the good thing about them is they're going to give you training. They're going to have videos set up where you get to walk you through what this means, how this works. I'll even give you a certificate if you need it. To say that you learned something. So that type of deal. Like, where do I find the information I need to make me be an effective communicator based on what the analytics show me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh, I'm glad you brought it back, because this is how I needed to ask you this question. Yeah, it's about bridging the gap into your entrepreneurial space. And now that you've spent 30 years in this communication space, now you're doing this in video. What's the most exciting thing about bridging everything, taking everything that you learned and packaging into your new company? And what's the name of your new company?
The new company is AF Visuals. I'm going to send you a link so you can check out my personal wedding that we
in the
did.
Description below so that they can always reach out to you as well.
It's AF Visuals. The fun thing, one of the fun things about the company and trying to bridge the gap is trying to find the need, right? So we talked about creating a niche. So I started this company and we were very much focused on doing wedding videos. And then I ran across so many other, entrepreneurs who are building spaces and needed that as well. But, people want to charge like big business prices for, your building. Like, seriously, I need like some YouTube videos or I need some social media branding. It's not, So creating something that could support people in their endeavors as well. But then as I move along this path, you realize that there are so many different gaps, right? That the business can fill. Yeah. So that's where I've kind of stepped back and then really leaned on my experience that I've had thus far and say, okay, you can't be all things to everybody. So you've got to really sort of narrow it. And in your experience, what have you learned is the most important? How can you reach the most amount of, most people with, with your business or with what you're trying to do? So that's where I'm kind of pulling back and looking at, like, what's my business strategy and how's that look and how do we, make this work in a way that makes sense? Yeah. So I'm leaning on so much of like what Africa has learned over the years, because Africa in this space is a rookie. And that's the thing that you have to remind yourself too. Yeah. Right? Even though I've done this and the business is very much a continuation of my personal experience, it's still new. Yeah. And trying to operate in this fashion is still new. So sort of giving myself some grace in that. Like letting It's almost like you got to do some duality in this, letting the corporate version of yourself mentor the entrepreneur in yourself, right?
Letting the corporate person mentor the entrepreneur.
Right? Like, think about that. Like, okay, so in your experience doing data analysis and all these other things, you were used to doing this side. You had gotten used to, like you said, the coffee side chats and this, that, and the other. You had gotten used to conducting business in this way.
Yeah.
So now, as you start off in this, your personal venture, it's like, what does that look like?
Yeah.
You know? Mm-hmm. And I've got to lean on some of those things that I knew and some of that knowledge I had to help me through this process.
Got it. They say success leaves clues. So when you think about, okay, what's worked for me in the past?
Right.
Okay, so let me use that.
Right.
Do you ever go to your future self and get advice from your future self?
Yes. My future self is, my future self is always telling me to give yourself some grace. I think that we are our biggest critics. We are our biggest, like we said, naysayers and talking ourselves out of things. And that's what I think my future self is going to tell me. You could have been here 20 years ago. What you told yourself you didn't want to do it. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I always remind myself of. There's a future version of me that's going,
I'm waiting.
Right. Do it. You know, whatever that is, do it. So I got to work on this movie. That's what it's telling you? That's the ultimate goal. That has always been the ultimate goal. It's been to be a filmmaker, to tell stories. We all have a story. I'm so intrigued by, you know, the 10-year-old version of you, like what that looked like. What were your dreams then? Like how, you know, what was that journey like? Like that, those stories, like. And we've got to tell our stories. The future version of me is going, what are you waiting on?
So if I'm hearing you correctly, though, what I'm hearing you saying is, one of your tagline is let me tell your story through video. The reason that you're doing it through video strategically is because you have this bigger vision, you have this bigger dream of creating a movie that will put you in the spaces that you really truly want. You want to be on the stages that you want to be on.
Ultimately, that's the goal. So
the main goal is like creating films. It's cinematography. That's what it's called.
Yes.
Cinematography.
That's the ultimate goal.
So if more clients were to come to you and you were attracting people who want to create cinematic projects, that would literally be in tune and aligned to your vision.
Yeah, that would ultimately be there. Absolutely.
Hey guys, it's Ariel from the Work and Play podcast. If you're getting any value from this channel, and I mean anything from the tutorials to the podcast to the random videos that you see on this channel, then I just ask that you do one thing. Please subscribe. Subscribe and share this to anyone that you think this resonates with, and drop a comment below so I know what other things that you want to see next. Now let's get back to the episode.
Now we know what to manifest.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's the thing. It's like, and the video space is just, I feel like for me, it was a decision to make sort of a soft transition to that, because it's a great opportunity for me to take my experience. I mean, a lot of experience doing marketing, communications, that sort of deal, and so move that into that space and get more experience in telling stories and shaping the narrative and getting, you know, used to what does that look like, framing and all of the very critical things that come with like shooting and you know, so it was a natural transition to kind of marry the two. But ultimately that story of that 8th grade girl on the train to the law office will be somewhere in a theater near you.
Hopefully. And she's gonna be proud of you, and your future self's gonna be proud of you. And she's like, I'm like, not finally, but she here now.
Absolutely.
We on stage now. This is exciting. Well, then for you guys who are listening and watching, you know exactly what to come to Africa for. I wish I was your assistant, because I would be like, nope, she's not doing this. Nope, we're only doing these types of clients.
Exactly.
But you know what to do in your own business. But I will say thank you.
Thank you so
much for coming onto the couch with me. This has been really fun.
This has been awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
And the funny thing is, this is our first time really, really talking.
Absolutely.
And we're friends with the same people, so I have just been blessed.
Yes.
So if there's anyone out there who's watching or listening who resonates with your story, they want to work with you either as a client or they want to just continue following your journey, how do they contact you?
afvisuals.com. AF Visuals, AFVisualsLLC.com.
Got you.
There you go.
Do you have an Instagram business page as well?
I do.
Okay,
I
what's
do.
your Instagram?
Facebook, same thing, AF Visuals, and Facebook as well. So
Perfect.
I'll link everything.
We gotta hit underscores
As
or
well.
nothing.
Exactly.
Everything will be in
there
the
you
bio.
go. There you go.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you again for being on the couch.
I appreciate it so much.
Until next time, peace out.